Like a lot of two-parters, the first half of Deathly Hallows merely served to whet our appetites for the climax, and this was one fans had been waiting for 10 years. Although technically it's based off the same book, you'd be surprised at just how different it feels from the first film. It goes back to Hogwarts, so on a certain level it feels more akin to the rest of the series. However, I don't remember a single entry that had so much build-up. You would think that Part 1 gave us all the build-up we needed, but this film simply elevates it to a whole new level. I compared the first film to Lord of the Rings, what with the characters journeying into the wild for evil objects, and one of those objects having a negative impact on the characters. However, with the second film leading up to an epic war, guess what? Looks like Tolkien rears his charmingly British head again. Deathly Hallows Part 2 again has a lot of things that make it stand out, like dragons, large-scale battles, and after all this time, clarity as to where Snape's loyalties are. For October, I actually do plan on doing some actual horror movies, so let's get this one out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, the 8th and last Harry Potter film. After opening with the same scene that closed the first film, we find our heroes at Bill Weasley's safe house, where Harry interrogates a goblin named Griphook. Venturing a guess that there's an actual Horcrux inside Bellatrix Lestrange's vault at Gringotts, the wizard bank, Harry promises to give the Sword of Gryffindor to Griphook if he gets them inside. Hermione uses Polyjuice Potion to disguise herself as Bellatrix Lestrange.
How do I look?
Hideous.
Which, at this point, seems to be the solution to everything. Think about it. How many problems would you be able to solve just by having the luxury to transform into certain people? Hi, I'd like to buy this house. With what money, poor ugly guy? Bill Gates' money, motherfucker! Seriously, that's starting to become Rowling's ultimate cheap plot device. Can't solve a problem? Polyjuice Potion, bitch. Hermione stumbles into Gringotts with Harry wearing his invisibility cloak and Ron disguised as some homeless guy, but for some reason she can't seem to get her voice exactly right.
I most certainly do not understand.
She raises the goblin's suspicions when Harry puts some kind of charm on him that forces him to obey. They take a roller coaster ride down to Bellatrix's vault where they have to pass by a blind dragon.
Been trained to expect pain when it hears the noise.
That's barbaric.
They enter the vault when Harry catches sight of the Horcrux. However, as soon as they attempt to get it, the other treasures in the room begin to multiply. Finally getting the cup, Harry escapes with Ron and Hermione, only to realize that Griphook led them into a trap.
I said I'd get you in. I didn't say anything about getting you out.
With security guards attacking them, Hermione does something completely out of character when she takes a leap of faith using the dragon as their one escape route. There's this fun shot of the bank goblins hard at work as usual when their peace is interrupted with the dragon bursting out from the floor. Escaping from Gringotts, the dragon eventually loses wind and starts to descend, dropping our heroes into a lake. While nearly drowning, Harry's mind gets invaded by Voldemort, who now knows of their quest to find and destroy the Horcruxes. However, through his vision, Harry also saw that one of the Horcruxes resides at Hogwarts. Back at the bank, Voldemort kills all of the survivors, because a dragon blasting through the floor and setting everything ablaze with its scorching fiery breath wasn't enough, I guess. Harry decides to take the secret entrance to the castle at Hogsmeade, and after dodging Death Eaters, runs into Dumbledore's brooding brother Aberforth, who reveals a grudge he held against Dumbledore for running out on his family. Harry reminds him that this isn't about Aberforth's personal feelings.
I'm not interested in what happened between you and your brother. I don't care that you've given up. I trusted the man I knew.
And so, reluctantly, Aberforth fetches help. Within minutes, Neville Longbottom comes to lead Harry back into the school. This is where things start to get good. When Harry enters the Gryffindor common room, he's instantly greeted by cheers and applause.
Flying.
As it turns out, Snape gathers all the students and teachers and warns them to hand over Potter by penalty of, well, some severe punishment. Honestly, he's a headmaster. Is he really going to risk killing someone in his school? Maybe he'll force them to watch Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I am brain the size of a planet, and they asked me to take you up to the bridge. Call that job satisfaction, because I don't.
That would have even Voldemort running and screaming for the hills. But seriously, after giving his grim speech, Harry shows himself amongst all the students and reveals how it was Snape who killed Dumbledore.
It seems, despite your exhaustive defensive strategies, you still have a bit of a security problem, Headmaster. I'm afraid it's quite extensive. How dare you stand where he stood? Tell them how it happened that night. Tell them how you looked him in the eye. A man who trusted you and killed him. Tell them.
Snape raises his wand when, and this is just awesome, Maggie Smith, Professor McGonagall, steps into Harry's defense and starts knocking Snape back, forcing him to flee the castle. I haven't been this excited for a Harry Potter film since I saw Harry fight the dragon in Goblet of Fire. In the theater, I nearly stood up and cheered. The last few movies painted a pretty despicable picture of Snape, so to see him get chased from the castle by a fellow teacher was exhilarating. It also brings to the table a sense that finally the heroes are taking back the playing field now. However, the scene is followed by this nightmarish sequence that looks like it could be a contender for the next Exorcist movie. Dear God, I was joking. Pray they don't make any more of those. We hear Voldemort's voice enter the heads of all the students, telling them to hand Harry over to him, or basically, he'll kill everyone. One of the bullies from Slytherin commands that someone grab him when McGonagall, in another radical move, has Filch take the entire Slytherin house down to the dungeons. Harry asks McGonagall to buy him time to find Ravenclaw's lost diadem, another Horcrux.
Potter. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Professor.
As chaos ensues throughout the castle, Professor McGonagall encourages the students to do whatever it takes to fight back, and then casts a spell to protect the palace. Statues start coming to life as the teachers build a protective shield around the castle. It's all very sweeping and epic, and a little Tolkienish, but who cares? Honestly, I love these kinds of stories. Running in and out of forests doesn't do much for me, but this was the first time all the characters we've met along the way were coming together to fight this massive battle.
I've always wanted to use that spell.
As Harry continues to search, he ignores Luna, who at first seems to be pestering him with her particular brand of crazy talk. But she finally says something useful, pointing out that since no one alive has seen the diadem, he needs to talk to someone who's dead, like one of the many ghosts that inhabit the castle. Luna takes him to talk to the spirit of Helena Ravenclaw, who's reluctant to tell Harry the location of the diadem for fear he'll try to use it the same way Voldemort did. Eventually, Harry convinces her otherwise.
If you have to ask, you'll never know. If you know, you need only ask.
Yeah, it's in the Room of Requirement. This is all juxtaposed with scenes of the two forces preparing for war, with Voldemort commanding the Death Eaters as they begin their assault on the school. We have the obligatory heartfelt scene between George and Fred, kind of like Pippin and Merry. In the meantime, Hermione and Ron go down to the Chamber of Secrets to look for a basilisk fang, an instrument they think can be used to destroy Horcruxes now that they no longer have the sword. They use the thing to destroy the cup, are drenched with water, and finally share their predictably forced kiss, ending years of sexual, or in this case, sexless, tension. Voldemort freaks out and sends out another strong torrent of magic, or lasers, whatever it is, and finally breaks through Hogwarts' outer defenses. A legion of Death Eaters chases Neville across a bridge when it explodes.
That went well.
As the battle ensues between giant trolls and menacing statues, Harry, Ron, and Hermione get to the Room of Requirement and find the diadem, when they're cornered by Draco and his gay lovers. When they open fire, Ron chases them into the abyss, then doubles back when he realizes they set the whole room on fire. With Draco and his cronies climbing for their lives, one of the kids actually falls and dies in the flames. A Harry Potter movie actually has the balls to kill off a kid? A clever move, because it keeps us guessing whether or not we'll actually see Harry die. Harry, proving what a hero he is, swings around on his broomstick and actually rescues them.
If we die for them, Harry, I'm gonna kill you!
Ron kicks the diadem into the flames just as they narrowly escape, and another Horcrux bites the dust. You know, they could have retitled this movie Night of the Horcruxes. They spent most of the last movie just trying to figure out how to destroy one, and now they're finding them left and right. Voldemort never really thought this through, did he? Harry's next target is Voldemort's snake, Nagini, also a Horcrux, which explains why Voldemort is so protective of it. There are more scenes of war, with Harry and his cohorts dodging spiders and trolls as they attempt to find Snape, Voldemort's next target. Okay, so here's the thing that's kind of confusing. Voldemort's primary interest is the Elder Wand, one of the Deathly Hallows, which he stole from Dumbledore. However, Voldemort can't wield its power because the wand doesn't belong to him. It belongs to the one who killed Dumbledore. And Snape killed Dumbledore. Voldemort, leading us to believe that Snape has been an ever-loyal subject, gives him probably the most brutal death we've seen in the series, which isn't saying much because in Rowling's world, characters die off-screen. But seriously, even with Snape, this is pretty chilling to watch. When Voldemort leaves, Harry goes to confront Snape, who urges him to collect his tears so he can put them into Dumbledore's pensieve and find the truth. This is where the heart of the movie really shines, as we're finally given Snape's agenda throughout Harry's tenure at Hogwarts. I don't want to give everything away, but basically, Snape had a lot of affection for Harry's mother, Lily, grew resentful of James Potter when she chose him over Snape, and was ultimately betrayed by Voldemort the night the Potters were killed. Dumbledore offered to help Snape by making him his right-hand man, but only if Snape agreed to look after Harry. Strangely, Snape's acts of aggression toward Harry don't make us any more sympathetic toward Snape, because this flashback scene confirms what a jealous and vengeful person Snape was. He really hates Harry, but we don't know if his reasoning is completely justified. However, we also find out something else that's kind of tragic, even though we expected it.
When the time comes, the boy must die.
Yes. Yes. He must die.
You've been raising him like a pig for slaughter.
As Harry walks through the castle, he realizes how many friends of his have died in the battle. This scene really pisses me off because, again, a lot of characters we've come to know throughout the series are suddenly just shown dead. What's with all of these anticlimactic death scenes? We saw a kid roast to death a few short scenes ago, but you can't show someone getting knocked out by a spell? I'm sorry, but seeing two dead bodies lying next to each other doesn't do anything for me. Harry accepts the fact that he's let enough people die for him and decides to go sacrifice himself for the good of the cause. As he goes to the Forbidden Forest, he discovers the Resurrection Stone and is able to converse with all his dead relatives. As he makes himself shown to the enemy, Hagrid, held captive, gets alarmed as Voldemort goes in for the kill. All I can say about this scene is it's pretty profound. Seriously, villains almost never win in these kinds of films.
Harry Potter. The boy who lived. Come to die.
So, of course, Harry wakes up in a dreamlike environment and begins having a conversation with Dumbledore, hinting where they're at and giving Harry the chance, if he wants, to go back and finish the fight. It's another profound scene, and there's some really good dialogue.
Is this all real? Or is it just happening inside my head?
Of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
I also have to admit it's nice to see Michael Gambon in the performance one last time. But I can't help asking, isn't this cheating? It's like someone entered a Game Genie code into the world of Hogwarts, allowing Harry to live past his intended number of lives. But I digress. I'd rather have him live anyway. Narcissa Malfoy checks Harry's body to make sure the deed was done. Harry lets on that he's still alive, and Narcissa and he make a silent pact. She'll lie to Voldemort if he confirms her son is still alive. Giving her confirmation, Narcissa announces Harry's death. So Voldemort walks back to Hogwarts carrying Harry's limp body. You would think he would feel a heartbeat, right? I'm not a doctor or anything, but chances are if someone's dead, you'd know it. Neville gives an inspiring, if not somewhat clumsy speech about how they'll continue to fight despite Harry's death, and then reaches into the Sorting Hat, somehow pulling out the Sword of Gryffindor. Death Eaters start to go apeshit as Voldemort blasts the hell out of the castle, trying to kill Harry for a second time. One of the biggest crowd pleasers in the book was the scene where Molly Weasley has her duel against Bellatrix Lestrange.
Not my daughter, you bitch!
For some reason, it seems that David Yates prefers to underplay all of Rowling's most riveting scenes. It's okay to be over the top sometimes, you know. But regardless, Molly, to the satisfaction of Potter fans, does away with Bellatrix as Harry and Voldemort continue to crash and burn into things. The only thing standing in their way is the last Horcrux, which remains inside Voldemort's snake. Neville dispatches the snake as Harry gains control of the Elder Wand and blasts Voldemort into oblivion. His body crumbles into ash as we get this nice tracking shot of his remains flying off into the wind. Now, as far as endings go, I have a taste for the overdramatic. I would have loved one big 20-minute finale that gave this 8-movie franchise a proper send-off. One of the biggest complaints Peter Jackson's Return of the King got, okay, the only complaint it got, was that it took too long to end. Well, why not? What's wrong with it? Jackson knew that he wasn't just ending one 3-hour movie, but a 10-hour epic. He understood that he had a lot of loose ends to tie, and he showed, as I stood up from my theater chair for the 10th time in a row, how much he valued his characters by giving each of them a personal send-off. He knew he wouldn't be seeing these characters again. This is my biggest problem with Deathly Hallows. We didn't get that closure. It pretty much ends with Harry giving some boring exposition regarding the rightful owner of the Elder Wand. No surprises here, it was him all along, and then he simply throws it over the side of the bridge. Then we have the future scene, where we see Harry and friends 19 years down the road. We meet Harry's son, as well as Ron and Hermione's offspring. And wouldn't you know, their kids are proof that these two, in fact, had sex. But in true Rowling style off-screen. How fitting. And I know it's been said before, but I'll just go ahead and say it. The makeup here is pretty lousy, considering they're supposed to be full-blown adults 19 years after the fact. They look like they came back to the set the day after and threw on some bad wigs. Oh, wait, Daniel Radcliffe has facial hair. Whoop-de-doo. Complaints aside, I would say that Deathly Hallows Part 2 is one of the better entries in the series, but I think the build-up was actually better than the result. Think about it. The movie finally picks up when the teachers begin to set up their defense around the castle and Harry returns to the school. But once the battles start, it just resorts to being a fun action movie. You might be asking yourselves, well, what's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with it, but I just felt it deserved a more fitting conclusion than Harry walking around the castle with a shit-eating grin right after killing Voldemort. Even if they ripped off of Return of the Jedi and gave us a shot of all the ghosts staring at Harry in fond farewell, that would have been a more worthwhile conclusion. But I digress. These films have an undeniably large fan base, and Hollywood turned a popular series of fantasy books into a franchise of compelling films. Even Order of the Phoenix is a decent movie, with a majority of the films above average. The only reason I complain about them is because I've been a fan since before the movies started coming out. They have believable characters, fantastic worlds, and great stories, all told through a whimsical, simplistic narrative. Every one of us at one point or another knew a Draco Malfoy or a Neville Longbottom, and we all look for a symbol of wisdom like Dumbledore to look up to. As the movies went on, the stories became more complex, with Rowling adding in more characters to keep track of. But the ones we cared about were always respectfully treated on screen, and the experience was well worth 10 years of great films. Okay, now that I've got that out of the way, let's do some shitty slashers as October continues.